Welcome on back to the N Harmon Show, folks. Sorry for the 1 week hiatus. It's Dalton Wicks alongside Eric Harmon.
Sorry about that, folks. I was in bed for about 3 days. Had a bad head cold. Today's episode, we're going over the Warriors, their recent run, the MLB offseason review, and a little A's Giants season preview for you as well. Let's get this show started, Dalton.
Let's do it. All right, we're going to hop into a little bit of dubs, switch things up a little bit.
I
Looking
like it.
Pretty good lately.
Going Warriors
Looking
first.
pretty good.
Man. These two games against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I don't know what more you could say about Steph. I'm running out of ways, the adjectives, the descriptive measures to compliment this young man. It's getting a little difficult.
He's hit just a level that it's something you'd really only imagine yourself doing, like really in a video game. Like when you set yourself to a 99 overall, so you can run all over the court, shoot as many threes as you want, make every single shot, get to the rim, make a crazy layups. It's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic.
It is.
I'm playing an arcade game. We're watching an arcade game out there. You know what it is? It's NBA Jam. He's on fire. He's made 3 shots in a row, and he just hasn't extinguished.
He's not going to ever stop being on fire. Yeah, that's the unfair part. It's really funny you bring up the video game aspect because I was seeing on my Twitter feed the other day, Andre Iguodala found this from a fan who tweeted at him, I guess, who after the first Thunder game when Steph made that ridiculous 3 to basically win the game, this guy goes and plays 2K after, and he tries to emulate all the long threes that Steph was making in the game, and he airballed all of them, and he was getting really pissed off saying, this game is
unrealistic.
It's BS.
Yeah.
I want my money back. This game's not realistic.
Because you can't do what he does in the game. If you tried to dribble and just shoot from 5 feet past the half court line, 10 feet past the half court line, that's what you're going to do. You're going to airball it. And because they preach realistic basketball. That's what NBA 2K is. But
is it realistic now? Is it realistic?
Steph Curry isn't realistic anymore in their reality. So they got to change that. It's just, oh my God, that shot against the Thunder to win the game.
Let's jump into the fact, and while we're on the subject of Steph, talking about these old has-beens, retired, just some legends too, respective careers in their own right, but it's just bagging on him. What did Steph ever do to these guys to deserve all this criticism? These guys are just constantly poking at his game.
I don't think that would be exclusive to Steph. And maybe because he's so small, but I really think what it is the rules have changed so much in the NBA with the defense. You used to be allowed to put your hands on the guy who had the ball without it being called a foul, and they had to get by you using their physical force, and they think that Steph wouldn't be able to do that in today's game. I don't think they think a lot of players would be able to do that in back in the day's game. So they see that, and they see everyone saying the Steph's the greatest alive, Steph's the greatest player we've ever seen, which may be just us being millennials and saying that everything we see is the greatest thing we've ever seen of all time. But
True.
Another part of it is that what we're seeing, even the adults are saying that. The guys who are in their 40s and 50s are saying this is stuff we've never seen before. The guys who are try to be as objective of it as much as they can, because Steph, oh man, it's something else. I mean, there was a play against that first Thunder game where Steph was sitting just outside the line. He was guarded by Steven Adams, had his hand in his face. Steph just pulls up 3-pointer over him and nails it and just runs back. And I think that's when Jeff Van Gundy said, Oscar Robertson, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I just don't understand why. I'm totally with a lot of those guys, and they have every right to believe, the game was different back when I played, and they have every right to say it was more hard knocks, kind of like it was bruise ball. You think about the old Detroit Pistons teams and all those guys roughhousing each other. Jordan's team played a little more physical than the Warriors do these days. But what a lot of people don't take into account is the fact that the new style of play in the NBA, some can view as kind of a savior for how the NBA is being viewed these days. Popularity is skyrocketing right now. It's shooting way above where people normally would see the NBA. It's more popular, in my opinion, than baseball. Football's kind of on the decline with the whole concussion thing going on and a lot of the scandals going on with the NFL. So you can make a case that because of the way the NBA is constructed with all the exciting three-point shots and the way that players are allowed to play more of their game and not worry about getting fouled all the time.
Yeah.
It's a more exciting product, and it's kind of
absolutely.
more for the fans, not necessarily. It's not like
Absolutely.
you can't blame Steph Curry for changing. It's not like he sat down and had a meeting with all the rest. Like guys, I think we're gonna stop stop hitting each other and everything. We're just gonna be a little more soft. That never happened.
They changed the rules to make it more naturally offensive, and Steph Curry is the evolution of those rule changes. He's perfected the game within the rules they made. And the rest of the NBA is going to follow him. You're going to see a lot more players like that, I believe. And it is a huge boon for the NBA because it's a lot more offensive. The fans love it. That's they're going to bring in a lot more revenue. You're not going to have fights, or as many fights because these guys are. The game's not as slow as physical as it was as in the past. So you're not going to have as much controversy on the court.
Then you got fights, and then that might be leading to popular players getting suspended because those fights can't ever come without consequences. And then what's a game with one of the more popular players around he can't even play because he got in some stupid fight last week? It's hard to change something that's part of the game that's been around. It's always been a more physical style of play, and it's really difficult to come together as the higher-ups of the league and decide, hey, we need to make a change for the greater good of because it could have a monumental impact. You have no idea how it's going to affect the game and how people watch it, how the guys play it. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And I respect guys like David Stern and Adam Silver for kind of progressing the sport into the modern era.
The NBA has always been making changes. Remember in the mid-'90s, they changed the three-point line distance. That's what makes everyone think MJ was a great three-point shooter if you just look at his stats.
And now you've got guys
2 years.
like Mark Cuban who think that the three-point line should be moved back because of guys like Steph.
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt Steph, though.
It really wouldn't. Yeah. Look at his percentage from deep behind the three-point line.
It would hurt everyone except for Steph. Yeah. So I don't think Mark Cuban
thought that. It would only glorify his dominance as a long ball sniper.
He would just be putting Steph on an even higher pedestal by making him the only guy who can make threes. So yeah, let's do that, NBA. Let's see how that goes for you.
So the Warriors themselves, really, really impressive lately, but it's just how they've been playing all season.
We've gotten used to it.
We can't act like we're surprised by it, although it is surprising every time you see it. In that first Oklahoma City game, you're thinking, no way. There's no possible way they're going to battle their way out of this. When Andre was at the free throw line with no time left, because there was really, if he missed one of those shots, it was over. Yeah, I was really holding my breath there.
I didn't get to see the game live. I was at work. I was on my phone. And I have 2 other guys there who were also watching it. And we were all 3 in different corners of the back watching the games. And so I see the comeback. I see Kevin Durant turns the ball over. That scrolls up. I see Draymond Green gets credited with the steal/rebound. And then I see a foul on Kevin Durant, and I'm like, okay, Draymond's shooting 2 free throws. I feel he's clutch. He's got this. And then I see Andre Iguodala, and I thought there is no way he was going to hit both his 3 throws. But Iggy is just clutch as they come, nails them both going into overtime. And then
it sounds weird because Draymond has been shooting at a better clip, but because of Andre's level-headedness, he's such a savvy vet. I would almost rather have him over Draymond, just because and like they said,
I could see the argument.
They mentioned that Andre's been in that exact kind of situation before where he had to make 2 to extend the game. I think it was when he was with the Sixers quite a few years back, and he sunk both of them then too. So it was like deja vu all over again. So he's been there and done that.
Clutch.
Draymond can be very erratic and very you never know what's going on in his head.
Up until that 3-pointer, he was something like 2 for 18 on his previous threes in the exactly. Yeah. He gotta wonder, like, when things get into his head, it seems like they seem to really get into his head. Like, I think this Kevin Hart All-Star Weekend thing kinda got to him. I'm not gonna lie. I think that got to him because
either that or his fashion sense. One of those dudes gotta be weighing on him a little bit. Got a lot of flack from all the guys. Like, what was on you?
Something got knocked out of gear. He's a little bit off. He'll get back to it because he's such a competitor.
He's still having such a huge impact all over the game, though. His versatility, the amount of rebounds.
Yeah.
He almost had another triple-double in that game, so...
He almost had a he wasn't that close, but he almost had a triple-double with only scoring 2 points. He had something like 5 steals.
Yeah.
And then I think he hit double digits on rebounds. I don't know about assists.
It's the not-so-glorified stats that he's really filling up. Draymond is a player of his own. Steph is a player of his own. We haven't seen players like those guys ever. Yeah. We can make comparisons like they resemble this player certainly, they resemble that and they look a lot like that, but they are completely unique. We haven't seen a Swiss Army knife like a Draymond Green or someone with the parking lot shooting range that Steph has. It's never been done.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you think Anderson Varejao? So he's been on the team, what, 10 days now? What have you seen? What have you liked, pros and cons maybe, on his early impressions?
He's an energy guy. He really is a guy that'll just come in and brings a little bit of passion and fire. He's been in the league for a long time. He's hung around the Cavaliers for quite a bit. You could use a little bit of the inside knowledge he has over there, how things work in Cleveland. And just what he brings to the team, it's another one of those things, kind of like when Draymond, it's not going to show up a whole lot in the stat column. His personality and his IQ. He's not really a guy that's going to be making a whole lot of buckets for you.
Yeah.
He's not one that's going to call his own shot a lot. He looks to pass the ball a lot, and he's not a dominant rebounder either. There's nothing that he really exceeds in like a certain category. Most of these guys have a calling card,
kind of like Jason Thompson was, though, like looking bad out there. The only problem I've had with him is that when they're running through their offense, and you'll see it's almost as if he doesn't think he should have hold on to the ball as long as the big men in that offense hold it, because Bogut will get onto it and he'll do his little body screen, let Steph or Clay run around him and set that pick that way and then dish it off to them. He tries to get the ball out of his hands within 2 or 3 seconds, and the rest of the guys moving on offense, I don't think they've adjusted to each other yet, because Varejao will just pass it away and the guys will just be like, okay, well, we're not in a set position. Our spacing's off because he's trying to get the ball away. He seems a little bit rushed out there and not knowing what he's doing in the offense, but I think that'll come with time.
He's really not in a good basketball rhythm. If you look at how little of playing time he's had in the past couple seasons, with that major injury with the blood clots keeping him out for a lot of the previous season with the Cavs, and then this season when he hardly played at all, just because they have such a glutton of bigs over in Cleveland. So he just hasn't had a whole lot of time on the court to actually establish a good flow with anybody, let alone the Warriors. And now he's trying to get into this championship caliber chemistry, this high tempo,
high IQ,
and tempo, always passing the ball around, looking for the best looks. And I think he might be a little intimidated as to how.
Absolutely.
Because in Cleveland, let's be honest here, how does their offense work? Get LeBron the ball and kind of get the F out of the way.
If you grab an offensive board, dish it back to LeBron.
LeBron's gonna play make, and if you get the ball and there's a little bit of time left on the clock, then you better put the ball up and hope that it goes in. Otherwise,
so he's not used to having the ball longer than 3 seconds.
So he really is.
He hits the 3-second mark. He's like, I gotta get this away from me, and tosses it to Brandon Rush. Who's just like, I'm not supposed to have the ball here.
Okay, so then to wrap up Dubs talk, we need to talk about some keys to maintaining the success down the stretch. I did just see that Kerr was asked about the Bulls' run, and it's probably getting old at this point hearing about it, but it is getting really, really close and down to crunch time, and it's a real possibility now. He did say he's going to prioritize rest over the Bulls streak, so that'll be something to look out for down the stretch. You saw it with Iguodala sitting out that Hawks game, as well as Steph. And the Warriors just happened to pull that one out.
He's
it was
learned because
good.
Because about 2 weeks ago, he was on the other side of that issue. He said, you know what, if they want to go for it, we'll go for it. And then these more injuries have popped up. That's the smart way to go about it, too.
You see Steph roll his ankle the other night, and then Iguodala's kind of feeling the effects, and now it's kind of like, well, reality's setting in now.
When I learned he rolled his ankle, the end of the game didn't become important to me at all. I did not care. I was just like, I just want to know if he's healthy. That's all I care.
It was not really something that I was going to take lightly. It was rewound, and they showed the slow-mo of how it happened, and he rolled it pretty well. And I've had one of those really hard ankle sprains myself, and it's something that just lingers for a while.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It could have, considering the amount of stress he's putting on that physically, it could last that kind of effect for months. It could last throughout, like, into the playoffs. So who knows?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much they decide to rest and how long it'll linger. Because
you could very well see him just periodically sit out games. I mean, it's not out of the question that he could sit against the Lakers on Sunday. Who knows?
Absolutely. I mean, they don't need.
Because that's the first game of a back-to-back too. They're going to play, I think, Orlando the next night. As they
Jazz after that, then Trailblazers.
Those are two teams that play the Dubs pretty well, actually. So not as easy as you'd think. So keys to maintaining the success is, I think, not making a lot of changes. Honestly, just sticking true to your game and not worrying about making some big adjustments, or just stick with what's been working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stick with the same kind of schemes that Kerr's been running. His out of bounds plays, I swear, every time I see him, it's amazing to see how open these guys are getting out of the timeouts.
Great looks. It's almost an assured basket when they're coming out and they have a little play drawn up that they're going to get something. That's great coaching, and that's how you get those victories. That's where coaching really makes its mark in the NBA.
Yeah, and I'd also say another point, Barnes, for as much as we've talked about his contract stuff, time to earn it, buddy. I mean, coming down the stretch, Steph shouldn't theoretically have to carry this team, and Clay's volume shooting, those shouldn't be the only two driving forces of this offense. We need more from Harrison.
We know he has it in him.
He does, and he's shown plenty of flashes of it, but
yes.
we just need to see more consistency out of him. And
consistency.
I liked that he was trying to fish for his own shot a little bit. I was keeping tabs on that in the last game. He found that switch on Ibaka where he's a little more agile and athletic, and he tried some step to the side shots and tried to get some space between him. So he's looking for it. He's not quite in that flow yet, but he could get there.
You have two mental states, I feel like, when it comes to Harrison Barnes on the court. You have him, when he becomes aggressive on the court, he becomes an incredibly great third option for the Warriors, who they can keep going back to, and he has those runs where he'll hit 4 baskets in a row or nail a game-winning shot at dagger. He's shown that when he gets to that aggressive point, I don't want to say dominant, but he can force his will. There we go.
Could be a dominant player one day. Could be.
He can force his will on the court. So that'll be a key, getting him to get to that more consistently.
There's just so much unknown, I think, just because of the fact that he's not ever going to get the opportunity to really show what he's capable of on this team. So if he stays on this team, he's going to be accepting that sort of more minute role. It's the Steph, Clay, and Draymond show, and then everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this team rolls. So, I mean, we're never going to see Barnes truly shine as like the number 1 or number 2 option and see what he's really got inside, because he's shown plenty of flashes. But I mean, we need to get what we can out of him when he gets those looks. I think that'll pretty much wrap up the Warriors talk for today. Hopefully they keep things moving down the stretch. Yeah, it should be fun to see them coast into the postseason and get down to business again, repeat.
Let's see how many they got. 22 games left. Are they 55-5?
Yeah, they've played 60 on the dot.
Okay, yeah. All right, 22 games. Let's do it.
All right, now we're going to switch gears onto the MLB offseason. It is officially wrapped up and spring training is underway. Oh, I love spring training. Went last year to go watch the A's play a little bit. It was fun. Loved being down in AZ, soaking up the sun a little bit, watching them get loose.
I'm in the exact opposite ballpark. I don't pay attention during spring training. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it's not so much just to pay attention. It was just like I wasn't really paying attention to the stats being put out.
Scores,
I wasn't like keeping score on the sidelines and stuff like that. It's just it was just kind of watching them all, like all the youngsters get out there and try to make a name for himself too. It was kind of cool to see them just all get out there. It's weird because there's so many players out there, and it's not your typical 25. There's 40 guys at least out there all playing, and it's a different lineup every inning almost.
Yeah, it's got to be cool being out there in like the Arizona sun or say the Florida humidity, because when you're out there, you're playing baseball, you're like, this is spring training, this is my chance to make a roster. The baseball dream for a non or a roster invitee or something like that is
the pressure is monumental
this is his
on
chance.
Some of those young prospects. Yeah,
so I agree. It's not about the box scores really. It's about the personal stories and seeing who makes the roster. Just following those stories where it really gets interesting. So I can see where I follow it from that perspective, but I without a doubt am never looking at a box score during spring training. Like I'll get my updates on my phone, like Giants lead 4-1, Giants down 8-7. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna open it up.
Just to paint a perfect example for you, last spring training, I remember seeing Madison Bumgarner got roughed up in one of his spring training starts, and he was tagged 6 runs or something like that. And it's just, then you see the season he has, and it's just that's how much it actually has to do. A lot of those, especially big names like him too, a lot of the times, some of those guys might be trying out new pitches.
Exactly.
They might be shaking off a lot of rust.
They're not going into those games with MLB game plans. They're not going in to strike guys out, get outs. They're going in to test pitches, test combination of pitches, see what works, see what doesn't work, see if there's any new holes in a batter's strike zone. Like they're testing, looking for information to form their game plan. So we have no idea what they're looking at going into a game. So it's really hard to talk about stuff we don't know about.
There's so much that factors into, for example, a pitcher performs like Bumgarner. It could be he's working with a new catcher that's never caught him before. It could be he's working on trying to take signs like the pitch is being called from a different coach, and he's getting used to that. Working on other kind of chemistry issues. It could be he studied a lot of tape on a certain style of a strategy of how to attack a batter, and he's trying to work at that a little bit. There's so many different aspects of how a guy goes into a start and goes in and preps for something. You never know what's actually going on there. And then when the regular season, you kind of get more of a feeling of how things are going to play out when the games matter.
I feel like even then, or I guess this doesn't really count for baseball since baseball is 162 games, but in other sports, I feel like you won't see teams' real final game plan until 3/4 of a way through a season. Like in basketball.
That absolutely counts for baseball too.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I mean, that's kind of why you got the teams constantly scrambling at the trade deadline late into the season when teams are, because it's teams throughout at least April and May, I think. You got to figure every team thinks that they have a chance of making the playoffs. Even the rebuilding teams are just like, yeah, why not? Why can't? Why
Things
not
go
us?
right for us. Yeah, exactly.
We can do it. And then by the time June rolls around, and then you kind of start to bleed into July a little bit, then teams see their record and they're just like, okay, let's actually be realistic now and see if we're going to say goodbye to this season, work towards next season, get some prospects, some looks, or maybe we got a shot.
Yeah, okay. I can see what you mean. You know how in a game plan, like NBA teams, like they might introduce zone at certain points, just test it out, and then later in the season, like they'll bring out zone if it's effective more and more often because they'll be actually use it in a playoff game. I don't know if in baseball, like you see teams steal more often, because I think it's just the intuitive of the sport. You have less of a game plan. Unless you're a pitcher, of course, and I think that's where you'll see it the most, I'd guess, where in pitchers, what I would mean is that like pitchers changing their game plan as the season goes on to give batters over that they'll face 20 times a year different looks, because they record everything. They know exactly what the third pitch you threw in the second at bat against the batter was. That's all remembered. So you do have to switch up your game plan as the season goes on to keep them off guard, and then have going into the postseason, I guess, a mental edge maybe if they don't know what's coming, what pitch you're going to throw.
Yeah, I think what makes baseball unique in that regard, when you mention the strategy of pitch by pitch to like a zone scheme in playing defense in basketball or even the NFL, is it's not as team based in baseball. It is a team game. It's 9-on-9, but it's much more individual when you really kind of look closely at it. It's basically pitcher versus batter, and then it's up to the batter to bring the defense into the game.
Yeah.
And that's what it is most of the time. So there's not ever going to be, I mean, there's some chemistry involved, like where the middle infielder is going to need to know what kind of pitch is coming and get ready for it that way. That's pretty much as far as that goes. I mean, other than that, it's just kind of waiting and reacting. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of actual, okay, you're going to rotate here and I'm going to go move over here to like the left side of the court. Like there's not a whole lot of actual issues going on with the
I guess
team
we are
chemistry.
seeing that a little bit more, and I guess that's just shifting though. Defensive shifts where coaches are just like, hey, let's just put everyone on the right side of the field because he's going to hit it over there.
Yeah, it's kind of overblown. I think it's seen as a strategic move. I mean, that's it though. I mean, they move over there and then it's just waiting and reacting, and there's not a whole lot of like, okay, now we're here and now we're just gonna wait for the ball to get hit.
Yeah.
And if it's not hit here, dang it, then we're gonna move on to the next one.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll play the percentages. What can we do? Yeah, I hear you.
So for the MLB offseason, lots of moves going down, lots of trades, lots of free agent signings, some big names switching teams. Some of the big names that we saw, Jason Hayward was the first big domino to fall, big contract, signing that $184 million deal with the Cubs. What do you think about that one?
I think that's that's right around where he's worth. I'd say that's good. I think that's worth it. He doesn't bring as much power as you thought he was going to bring when he entered the MLB. So you're not going to see it in 30 home runs, 35 home runs. He's going to bring it in the batting average. He's not going to bring it in the power. He's going to bring it in the fielding a little bit. He's
a good, reliable 280, 290 hitter, I think. He's more contact heavy, like doubles kind of guy. He's not going to hit you 30 jacks or anything like that. You're right. He was, I never really understood. I mean, after a certain point, why they kept saying like, "Oh, he's got this power in him, and he could emerge as a perennial home run." It's just not there anymore. I mean, you got to realize that he's more of a 5-tool guy than like he's a big power guy, kind of like a Chris Davis. It's just not in the cards.
His first at bat may have biased a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. You see something like that, and then you're just like, oh, he's got all this potential. It's like, well, then it's 162 game season for a reason.
And then everyone's asking, well, why did you think he was a power hitter? It's like, well, did you see his first at bat?
Yeah, Dallas Braden also threw a perfect game, folks. Let me just remind you
on
all
Mother's
of that.
Day. That was a great.
And it went 0-8 after that game. So 1 game wonders happen.
1 game wonders.
Yeah, some of the other big signings, Yoenis Cespedes and Justin Upton, 2 of the other big outfielders. The Mets obviously signed Cespedes back. Big cog to their championship run last year that fell just a little bit short. And they're hoping that they can regain that momentum and maybe take down their AL counterpart this year. $75 million though, and he's already spending.
I was going to talk. We were talking
quite
about the
a
cars.
bit of it.
The cars, yes. Oh man,
not just the cars though, but you see the pig.
Oh, I haven't seen the pig. I've seen the horses.
He bought a $7,000 pig. Yeah, and then he took it to the butcher.
Oh,
which pissed off PETA quite a bit.
Oh man, it's his choice. He can do what he wants. It's a pig. I mean, come on. Like I loved he showed up in horses. He brought a couple of horses. That was just clip-clopping around. He has been the entertainment. He knows.
Yeah.
I guess he's smart when it comes to making himself relevant during the MLB offseason, because he has been on point with becoming the story of the offseason. What's he going to come to spring training in next? You can't wait. I kind of love him for that. Thank you, Cespedes. You were great since you were on the A's. Yeah. He went to Detroit then, right?
Yeah.
Bad time in Detroit. No.
Speaking of Detroit, Justin Upton is heading to Motown. Along with Jordan Zimmerman, we can't forget about him too from the Nationals. But so Detroit made some big moves. They're clearly still trying to make something out of this championship window with V-Mart still in tow.
$242 million between those two guys.
Yeah, Justin Verlander, Miggy, all those guys are still hanging around, so they're thinking that they can, kind of assemble together some sort of monster at the last minute here and make a last push before these guys exit their prime.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting because Verlander, I mean, he was kind of a tale of two halves last year where he started off struggling quite a bit, and then he heated up down the stretch. Miggy had some injury issues going on. He's still got plenty of potential in him, though. He's not exiting the prime of his career by any standard right now. And then Victor Martinez is just getting old as well and battling a lot of injuries himself.
Ian Kinsler getting old too. You just said
the window's
yes.
The window's closing. Yeah.
I've never been the biggest fans. I guess the Uptons. I feel like BJ maybe has been is the disappointment of the two. But I've always felt like Justin Upton, watching him when he played for the Diamondbacks.
Overrated, come to mind?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. He had 20. He averages about 27 home runs per year. He didn't come through when you needed him to. He strikes out, hits out 260, 270 per season, and he never came across as a guy. His defense isn't spectacular. It's just average. So I guess he's the opposite of the Jason Hayward. He brings the home runs to the table.
And then again, I mean, granted, he was stuck in playing Petco Park too, so for the same, you can't really judge a guy on his power too much playing in that ballpark. It's going to hurt you a little bit, so maybe making the move to Detroit will help him a little bit in that regard. But, I mean, the power hasn't been really obvious. He hasn't been one of the top 5 or even top 10 guys in that department.
Yeah, I agree completely. They had to give up a second-round pick. Yeah,
a couple comp picks for both of those guys, yeah. You're not going to not offer the qualifying offer to Zimmerman and Upton with their pedigrees.
Yeah, Upton's 28. How old is Zimmerman?
Zimmerman's just entered his 30s. I think he's 31. So he's got quite a bit of time left to make an impact for sure. So it'll be interesting to see
$22 million per year.
Yeah, a significant investment made by Detroit. But that owner, he's made it clear that he just wants to go for it. It's not an issue for him. The money, he just wants to see if they got one last run in him. So. All right, so let's go over some winners and losers of the offseason. We've seen all of the moves now, with Ian Desmond being kind of the last big domino falling off the market, going to the Rangers on quite a bargain of a deal.
Who did he lose money?
I think, is it safe to say that Ian Desmond is our first loser of the offseason?
Absolutely, he's in first place. He might be the first place of the loser of any
last
player.
decade.
Yeah, the last decade. He lost about $99 million over 7 years.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But he tried to bet on himself, and you could say that he had a little bit of substance to go on. I mean, 3 straight Silver Sluggers, nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's pretty good. You can't just assume the production's gonna stay constant. I mean, he dropped off big time this last season, so it bit him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you have that along with maybe a perceived perception that he's surrounded by great talent in a batting order, and if you take him out of that spot, he might not get the pitches that he wants to see on a different team, and so the market's just not there for him. Not there for him to be a number 1. Maybe there for him to be an 8 million number 3, but not to be a number 1 guy. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll switch over to winners real quick. I'll go ahead and offer my first winner. Might brighten your day up a little bit. Considering, I mean, even though it's a lot of people think of it as a risk, I'm gonna say my first winner is gonna be the Giants. Woo! The reason being is because I'm skeptical about it. I have my doubts because, I mean, the amount of money they're putting into Cueto and Samardzija and guys like that. I mean, with all the injury risks and, the shaky seasons and whatnot. But what I like about what they did is they saw the uncertainty in the rotation with Lincecum sailing for better seas, Vogelsong jumping ship, and then you've got Heston as an unproven rookie. Showed flashes, but kind of inconsistent down the stretch. So they saw that the rotation was a clear need outside of Bumgarner. So they went and got him some help. They didn't care. They went out and spent the money. They were just like, Cueto, sure, bring him in. They were just like, smart RK, bring him in. Let's do this. And then they went and got Denard Span too, which I think is going to greatly help out the outfield situation. Just because, I mean, I know Span's been pretty hurt the past couple of years, and he's been off and on the injury list, but having his presence is going to really lighten the load on guys like Pagan and Pence, who are pretty injury prone themselves.
That's the big one there. Pagan has so much injury history with muscle injuries too, the kind that kind of linger there and have him need to miss games where just random games in a season because he's not feeling it that morning when he wakes up. So having Denard Span there being basically a very adequate center fielder, I wouldn't say adequate, I'd say maybe above average, a guy who can fill his spot and play better than maybe a Gregor Blanco type, having to replace him is exactly what you need with what needs to be filled in these because the Giants didn't have too many holes. They needed one outfielder, maybe 2. They got Denard Span. They needed the starting pitching, and then they have relieving pitching. There's a couple questions there, but it's still pretty swell. They lost some guys last year who gave them a lot of production. So I think they knew what they had to do. They spent the money to do it. It's just a question of whether these guys are going to be booms or busts at this point.
Yeah, we'll definitely jump into that in a little bit too when we talk a little A's and Giants. Let's move on. This will probably brighten your day more. My next loser is going to be the LA Dodgers. Reason being, and this was just kind of icing on the cake to this point too, with Brett Anderson now being announced that he's going to have back surgery and he's going to be out 3 to 5 months. So there's already a loss to that rotation. You lose Zach Greinke to a division rival, Arizona Diamondbacks, and then you signed Kenta Maeda and Scott Kazmir. A lot of people have been criticizing the Kazmir move because they don't think that he's really as great as he's chalked up to be, and so he's kind of a questionable number 2. So right now, that rotation's looking like, last year you had the 1-2 punch of Kershaw and then Greinke. Now this year, you're not going to have Brett Anderson. You're not going to have Zach Greinke. Those are 2 losses already. Now you're bringing in Scott Kazmir, who a lot of people think he's going to decline. Then behind him, you have the unproven Kenta Maeda coming over from overseas. You don't know what you're going to get from him because he's never pitched an inning in the bigs. So we don't know how he's going to react. And then you're left with okay pieces like Alex Wood and Mike Bolsinger. So that rotation is really looking iffy right now in LA. And I personally don't like the fact that they did nothing to really clear up that outfield jam that they've got going on with Ethier, Crawford, Jock Peterson, these other guys coming in. Like, they just traded for Trace Thompson in the offseason. Like, what's the plan there? They've got too many guys for too little spots. So, I mean, it's a little, and Puig, didn't even mention Puig too. Puig's got to find some playing time. You don't know what he's going to be doing for you. I think they probably should have got rid of him this offseason just because of the amount of times he's been butting heads with some of those guys apparently in behind closed doors. So yeah, I don't think it was the best approach that they took.
My favorite part about their offseason, it seems like whenever something was reported that the Dodgers were interested in something, like 2 days later, that player or coach was whisked away.
Yeah.
Or something happened. You had a Chapman, they backed out of that deal because of stuff that happened with him.
Although I think that was smart. That was in the long run a smart decision by LA. I'm not gonna.
The medical situation.
I wouldn't get mad at them for not signing a guy with like Chapman when he did what he did.
Iwakuma, he had his medical issue come up, and then they wanted to get Gabe Kapler, was reported, and they couldn't even, that didn't work out, so they went to Dave Roberts. It just seems that as a Giants fan, seeing them be
that's
thwarted.
the one move I think though that I think isn't too bad. I'm not a Dave Roberts hater. I think he'll be okay in that clubhouse, and I think he's going to be a little bit better of a fit than Mattingly, just because Mattingly has a bit more of an ego, and he's not going to really he didn't really mesh well with the egos of Puig and Kershaw and stuff, and he's going to thrive a lot better over in Miami. It's just how he is. It's not a knock on him. It's just some people, that's just how they are.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, they just have a little bit more of they're a little bit more opinionated, and they need a little bit more of control of the ship. And he's going to thrive a lot better over in Miami. It's because it's a rebuilding team, and they need a little more leadership from a guy like him. And whereas with the Dodgers, you just kind of need a calming presence, like somebody to keep things from getting too out of hand. And I think Dave Roberts is kind of a good man for that, because he's not a hothead by any means. He's kind of just smooth sailing.
Hopefully diffuse any situation that arises with Puig again. If that storyline crops back up again, have him just shut it down quickly using his calm, demeaning manner out there on the baseball field. So yeah, I can definitely see how that might be a good fit there. That's what they want with their team. We'll see how he handles strategy in the MLB, how he handles the day-to-day minutia, making the substitutions, see if he's competent when it comes to that, and then grade him out, give him some mid-season grades. Hopefully it's an F.
I'd say another loser to teams that offered the qualifying offer, because you saw for the first time this offseason, there were a couple that were accepted, and now we just mentioned the team that's going to be really wishing they didn't offer that in the first place now is the LA Dodgers, who are now going to be paying $15.5 million to a guy who's going to miss over half the season, and Brett Anderson with back surgery. So teams that are, in the past just throwing around that qualifying offer willy-nilly, just expecting everybody to turn it down. Now all of a sudden you've got Anderson who accepted it, and then you had Matt Wieters accept it for the Orioles, and then you had Colby Rasmus accept it for the Astros. And I think the Astros one really bit them pretty hard, because they're a team that wasn't looking to really expand the budget a whole lot this offseason. They're not really interested in making a whole, not at least yet. They could become one when Springer and Correa and these guys, they start going through the arbitration process. But I think for right now, they wanted to keep it a little bit more minimal while they could. But, with Rasmus now accepting that off, that just it spiked their payroll quite a bit.
That's got to be one of their higher contracts, really, 15.8 from the Astros, who are a team so built off their minor league system, not bringing in too many guys. It
is the highest annual salary on the Astros. No, by far. No one's even close to that.
So you have a team filled with guys making 6 digits.
Some of their highest paid players on that team are Pat Neshek and Luke Gregerson. They're relievers. I mean, a lot of their core players, like Correa and Springer and Altuve and all those guys, they're on very, very team-friendly deals, really low in salary. So they were really trying to keep things kind of monitored salary-wise, because they know that they're going to have to expand it sooner or later when those guys get a little bit more aged. But yeah, that threw a wrench in their plans. And also the Orioles, too, are never a team that really likes to spend tons of money, and they're not like their counterparts, the Yankees and the Red Sox in that division. They're not going to spend a ton of money. But then Wieters accepts that qualifying offer, and now you're stuck with a catcher paying him $15.5 million. That's a lot for a catcher by itself, and let alone one that just came off Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, they just put $38.8 million annually this year into both Chris Davis and Matt Wieters. So that's a lot of money for 2 players for a team that doesn't like to spend money.
Yeah. So. I mean, on one hand, you give them a little bit of props, because a lot of people were saying that they couldn't maintain all of their, because they had a lot of free agents coming up in this offseason.
Darren O'Day, they were able to re-sign him for 7.5 per.
With all the guys they had set to hit the open market, they had O'Day, they had Wieters, Davis, Wei-Yin Chen, and then Gerardo Parra. They let Chen and Parra go, which, I mean, Chen, I think they probably should have prioritized over one of the other guys. Like, I would have rather had Chen re-signed and then not even given the qualifying offer to Wieters, but, you offer that up and then he takes it. And I think that's what ultimately screwed them out of signing him back, is him taking that offer. But, I mean, they did okay. They signed some other guys back. I mean, O'Day's back. He's a really good reliever. Davis is back. I don't know about that commitment to him, but power pays. I mean, it's such a power-starved league these days.
Interesting to see if Giovanni Gallardo can give them anything.
Yeah, and then they went out and got him. And there was a little bit of controversy with his contract talks at first, and he ultimately had to settle for a little bit of less money due to the there's a lot of controversy going on with the Orioles medical stuff, with Dexter Fowler supposedly agreeing to a contract and then that falling apart, and then he ends up going back to the Cubs.
Yeah,
and
that was
then
weird where he said
Gallardo had some stuff going on with his, and then he had to take less money. So there was a lot of people criticizing what exactly is going on in the Oriole.
The agent, who was the first player you just named him?
Dexter Fowler.
Dexter Fowler. His agent put out a little press release saying he
was mad.
He was furious.
He
with
was
the Orioles.
really really mad at how the Orioles handled that, and I don't think that's more of Fowler and Gallardo. I think just there's something interesting going on with the physicals that they're offering, the medicals. There's some odd kind of strategy they're taking in that regard.
Something that my eye was open to the last couple of days from remember that Detroit deal, the Detroit trade in the NBA that got canceled because one of the players failed a physical.
Yeah, we actually I was talking about that, how that was a good trade actually for both sides involved. Donatas Motiejunas, and then there was going to be a first round sent over to Houston, and now that's just not happening.
He said something to the media. He said he passed the physical, that these physicals are just used 2 or 3 days, that if a team wants to back out of a deal, that's their way to do it. Just say he failed a physical.
Kind of like a buffer, I think.
Yeah,
kind of like let us reflect on this for a few days, and then maybe they just kind of chicken out a little bit later.
Yeah. So
it makes sense.
You got to wonder if there's maybe a little bit something more going on with all of these little physicals that teams are having, and maybe it's not just an Orioles problem, or maybe it is just these teams. There's a couple trouble franchises that are using physicals to get out of things they don't want to be involved in. So some shady stuff going on around here.
Shady for sure.
Private investigator Harmon is on the case.
Yeah, so those are just a couple of the winners and losers we'd take from the offseason. And now we'll move into a little more Bay Area focus. A's and Giants off seasons in particular. We already hit on the Giants a little bit with the Cueto span, and I think
there's more to say about the A's. I think there's only 2 storylines really that the Giants even have. I feel like that are important. The pitching, how the pitchers are going to do, and what's going to happen in their outfield, like everything else. Yeah,
I think just with the Giants is going to be keeping an eye on Kane and how he's doing with his progress and his rehab, and seeing what he's got left in the tank. Keeping an eye on Heston.
Something flared up this past 2 weeks for Kane, so yeah. And
I don't think right now they're seeing it as too serious, though. I think he's going to be okay for now. They're just going to move him pretty slowly along, and then seeing what Heston's got in him, seeing if that aging bullpen's going to maintain. I think that's another thing that people are really overlooking is Casilla, Romo, Lopez, all those guys. They're not exactly, in their mid-20s anymore. They've been around the block a few times.
Oh, man. They're going to have to rely on that hard-throwing reliever.
Hunter Strickland.
Yeah, Hunter Strickland, yeah. The man who...
George Contos, another guy, like some of those lesser-known guys to kind of step up and be a bigger force. And now they don't have the luxury of Yusmeiro Petit. I thought that was really stupid of them to let him go to the Nationals. I have no idea why they let him go. He wasn't even going to command that much in salary. He was $3 million, which is nothing to these teams these days, and they just kind of let him go.
He's always been strong coming out of the bullpen.
And I know we just mentioned how spring training's not really that big of it's not going to tell you how a player is going to do, but it wasn't a good sign for PV, who just got roughed up for 6 runs in his start yesterday. And the enigma that PV is, where he can be pretty hot-headed and pretty off and on. So that'll be something that needs to get monitored
too. Season storyline, yeah, definitely. See whether we get good PV or bad PV. Bad PV can cause some
serious issues.
But good PV, oh man, do I love me some good PV. So it'll be fun to see that. There are questions with the Giants. but it's questions that have been talked about and talked about and talked about.
Overall, they're looking pretty good though.
Yeah.
Still one of the best homegrown infield in baseball. I don't think that's even up for debate. From Duffy all the way to Belt across the diamond, and then they extended Crawford, bring in Span. You still got one of the best catchers in all of baseball, and Posey. I mean, they're looking pretty good.
Injuries will be an issue to look at because there is a little bit of susceptibility, like we were saying earlier, with Hunter Pence and Angel Pagan being injured before you.
Can't really address those issues until they happen, though. So it's just kind of a wait and see thing. Right now, you just got to assume that there's health across the board, except for like guys like Kane who are already.
How often Buster Posey will be playing at first base instead of catcher?
I think it's going to increase. I think it's going to increase quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about them yet. It's stuff that can't be answered until questions that can't be answered until the season begins, really.
Yeah, lots of question marks over in Arizona for the green and gold, though. They're taking a pretty good look. I'm not sure exactly what the outcome is. My money's on him starting the year in AAA, but Sean Manaea, the big lefty, he's been raved about quite a bit, dominating AA, and we got him in the Zobrist deal with the Royals last year. He's been highly talked about. Be great to see him, a big lefty, kind of enter that rotation. He'd fill the void that Kazmir left after we traded him to the Astros last year. So be interesting to see the impact that he can bring. Like I said, I think he'll start the season in the minors, though, get a little more seasoning, and then get brought up at some point. Just because we got guys like Rich Hill who we brought in the offseason who will take that spot for now. Then we have the acquisitions of the Chris Coughlin acquisition that I just saw, that we got him from the Cubs. I thought that was quite interesting. How because that creates a bit of a roster crunch, and I'm not sure who's going to be left off the roster now, because before I was seeing it as we'd have Chris Davis, who we just acquired from Milwaukee and left, and then Billy Burns at center, Reddick and right, Yonder Alonso and Mark Canha platooning at first, and then Jed Lowry at second, Marcus Simeon's going to stay at short, Danny Valencia at third, Vogt and Fegley doing the catching. Then we have Sam Fuld and Eric Sogard and Billy Butler, those guys on the bench. And then when we bring in Chris Coughlin now all of a sudden there's a bit of a roster jam, and I don't know where he's going to fit in. And my money's on it, because you don't acquire a guy like him and then just not keep him on the team. He's going to be on the team, so who's going? I didn't know if there was going to be another trade worked out. Like, we're going to finally get rid of Billy Butler.
I was saying to my breath, Billy Butler.
Really, I'd be really excited to see that happen, but I don't think that's the case. There's just no market for a lumbering DH who's on the downside of his career.
Send him to Cleveland. They love the Jim Thome type, all right? Just package him clean him up, package him as a.
But Cleveland just brought in Mike Napoli, so that, I mean,
they already filled that.
Yeah,
okay.
that ship has sailed.
Maybe you can go Chicago White Sox. They like their Frank Thomas, their big hurt.
The White Sox already have a crappy DH situation too, where they're overpaying Adam LaRoche right now. They're paying him like $12 million to do nothing.
Who are other fat historical DHs? The fan bases will have a soft spot for.
We've had quite a few of them here in Oakland. I mean,
maybe that's why Billy Butler's in Oakland then. From
the likes of like John Jaha to Mike Sweeney at the end of his career. Then we had Frank Thomas himself, and then Olmedo Signs, and it goes on and on. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. If I were to pick somebody, I think that it might be Sogard, who finally bids his farewell to the green and gold if it comes down to it.
Not Sogi. I love it.
As much as I like to say, like, yeah, go Nerd Power, I mean, I really would not miss his production at all. From a business standpoint, it makes too much sense almost. He just doesn't really...
But the glasses, man.
Yeah, I mean, Nerd Power, there's your marketing thing, but I mean, they've already killed that bit too with like the nerd glasses giveaway and stuff like that. It's like, how much more can you really squeeze out of that?
He batted .247 last year with 1 home run. How are you going to get rid of that?
Pretty easily. It's not something I'm really going to cry at night over, to be honest. And Chris Coughlin, just considering the fact that he plays all the outfield positions and he could play second and a little bit of third too. And he's also a left-handed bat, and he has way more power than Sogard.
So Sogard might be sweating a little bit, seeing everything that he plays. Oh man, this guy's more versatile than I am. And
he's been compared to like a Zobrist 2.0 too. Yeah.
What am I gonna do? They're gonna cut me. I'm I'm screwed.
And unfortunately for Sogard too, I just don't see him even latching on to another team. Like, I think Oakland is really the only team that would employ him. I think the A's are going to be in a really underrated team heading into the season, though. They're definitely not going to lose as many games as they did last year. It'll be a significant improvement, especially with the bullpen being beefed up quite a bit. Additions like the veterans in Axford and Madsen. You could argue we may be overpaid a little bit, but got to pay a little bit here and there for something. I mean, we have such a small payroll. It's not like it's going to be a huge hindering on our pocketbooks.
Yeah.
I mean, Coco Crisp and Billy Butler are making by far the most money on the team right now at a little over $10 million. That's nothing. Ooh. That's nothing compared to like what Kershaw makes 3 times that money by himself.
I was about to recite a line from Moneyball. I'm gonna refrain from doing it. I'm gonna stop.
The big beef I have with that movie is the fact that they gave such little attention to the big 3. Hudson, Mulder, and Zito, and how vital they were to that run. It was kind of insulting, and it almost kind of highlights more the fact that how little they actually paid attention to that run. Like, being a hardcore A's fan myself and watching them throughout the years,
Miggy deserved such a bigger role.
They glorified Scott Hatterberg so much. It's like, dude, really? I mean, yeah, he had that one clutch moment, but I mean, then again, like I said, Dallas Braden is also throwing a perfect game. You don't see us sitting here talking about how iconic of a pitcher he was.
Maybe that wasn't the initial intention, and then they casted Chris Pratt into the role, and he charmed him so much that you're like, you know what? Let's just make this movie half about Scott Hatterberg. Who cares? All right, this guy. So it's like a Deep Blue Sea sort of situation with LL Cool J. So basically, they did that to Chris Pratt. They made Chris Pratt a main superstar of that show or that movie.
Now LL Cool J is hosting the lip sync battles. That's where his career is at right now.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Started from the bottom, shot up, and then came back down. So back to the A's. I think the rotation, Sonny Gray, obviously one of the best pitchers in the league. Nothing to worry about as far as he's going. But other than him, a lot of question marks. I mean, Rich Hill, can he sustain the success he had down the stretch with the Red Sox last season? Jesse Hahn, how's he going to respond after being shut down for the end of last season with his forearm and arm injuries? Kendall Graveman, too, who he had a really up and down year, being sent down to the minors at some point, then coming back up. He had one of the best spring trainings they had ever seen from a pitcher last season, and then just couldn't maintain it. That just goes to show you how little spring training can actually mean. He dominated. Like, they're like, wow, this kid, he has like big potential right here. And then he just kind of, like, I don't know what happened during the season.
Bought into a little preseason game too much. They forgot that they were game planning. Other teams, I think maybe they thought that other teams weren't game planning to beat him. And then they saw how he did, and they're like, oh, let's get a little ahead of ourselves. And now, and the regular season teams are just like, you bought that? Like, we kind of weren't trying, guys. Little Detroit Lions. 4-0 preseason, 0-16.
I'm envisioning some more shocker mid season trades from the A's, and the reason being is because we've got a few pretty decent prospects right now, as far as the infielders go, at least. So I could definitely see a guy like a Jed Lowry or a Danny Valencia getting shipped away mid-season, because we've got guys like Rangel Ravello and Matt Olson, some big thumpers. They're looking pretty good down there in the minors, so we'll monitor how they do in the spring. Joey Wendell's another one, the guy that we got in the Brandon Moss trade with the Indians, so we'll see how those guys progress, and if they end up pushing the envelope at some point, it may lead to the inevitable trade of a guy like a Valencia or...
The A's are always a team who, as it gets to the trade deadline, they really evaluate themselves and see, are we going to go for it this year, or do we need to just cut our losses and get ready for again next year? Just start maneuvering that payroll around, making money trades. If their guys can stay healthy, they've got guys who are supposed to be in the prime of their career. So Vogt stays healthy, Sonny Gray stays healthy. You get that stuff from Jed Lowry, Valencia, Coco Crisp. They're sticking around 500 as it gets to the trade deadline. They may just say, hey, let's go for it. Let's add some pieces to the trade deadline. It didn't work last time with the Samardzija deal and stuff like that, but I mean, you got to try for it, or else you're really not trying to win. If if you're sitting around there at that area, you got to go for it because you never know when you'll be back there. So
It was the Lester one that killed us. It was Samardzija, that deal wasn't as bad. It still meant that we lost Addison Russell, which, considering that now Semion's our shortstop, I mean, that really can be looked at as a pretty bad trade. Samardzija didn't really produce that poorly for us in particular, so I'm not as mad at that one. It was the Lester for Cespedes one that really screwed up our chemistry.
yeah,
That's why I think they're gonna be leaning way more towards a rebuild approach than a being aggressive approach now. But I mean, realistically, it's not a trade deadline if Billy Beane's not making phone calls.
yeah.
There's gonna be some wheeling and dealing going around at some point. So yeah, there's gonna be some kind of move that's being made or some discussions being had. There could be a little bit of reason to be hopeful for things changing a little bit and how they approach. There's been some discussions, some little rumors, whispers that they're talking to Reddick about an extension possibility. So that could be a good sign that they're at least trying to keep a name around for a little bit. Since Coco, they haven't really handed out any extensions or anything like. And Coco's he's not a total game changer type of player. Granted, Reddick isn't either, but it's at least a good sign, especially after seeing Donaldson go away, which I'm still so sore about.
I hate Brett Lowry. See, I'm a little bit of an A's fan just because I've growing up, I never went to any Giants games. Like, my good friends were all A's fans, so I basically only went for A's games growing up. So I kind of feel partial to the A's, and I hated Brett Lowry so much. I hated him in Toronto. I hated him as an A.
See, I don't get so much about... I can understand where it's frustrating having a guy like him, but there was a lot of talk going around. I've seen a lot of guys ripping on him. Why is it such a bad thing? Like, I don't think him as a person is really bad. There was a lot of people kind of saying, oh, it got really annoying how much energy he had. He was almost too hyped up a lot. It was pretty known. I mean, you always looked at him over at third base and he was constantly stretching and stuff. I always thought that was really funny because he was never standing still. Like, he was always really hyped up on something. So I didn't think he was that bad of a guy. I mean, I follow him a little bit on social media. He doesn't seem like that bad. He seems like a kind of level-headed guy, and he was appreciative. Like, he sent a little thank you to all the A's fans and stuff too when the news broke that he was traded. So I don't know. It felt a little weird. It's like some other people knew something I didn't in regards to how he handled himself.
I never actually just think he struck out too often. That's why I didn't like him when he was playing the Blue Jays.
I thought it was more of a frustration thing than people hating on him. And
yeah.
Kind of like a Puig or an A-Rod scenario where, like, you hate him because of his attitude, like his work ethic and stuff like that. Lowry, at least, I think he tried. I can't ever fault the guy for not giving his all.
Yeah, no, he was never for a lack of effort. I just don't think the production came for. I think it's been a lot of hype.
It was not. Yeah, it was exactly that. A lot of it wasn't to do with him itself. It was just a lot of guys are getting hyped up and overhyped these days, and then it's not necessarily their fault that they're not meeting those lofty expectations that these sports writers and these other people are putting on them. Just like, oh yeah, I think this guy is just gonna be the next. Who are you to say these? How do you know that?
Because these guys come in early, and it's almost a boon to them where they come in, they have success early on in their season. Like Brett Lowry, his first 40 games for Toronto, he had something like a 950 OPS, so batted 293, 9 home runs in 40 games. So everyone was just like, it was almost Jason Hayward at the bat thing. Just, oh, the power's there, the contact's there. He's going to be a 5-star hitter for the rest of his career. And then everyone puts together their file on Brett Lowry. And as soon as that happens, if you're not good enough to adjust and you're a one-trick pony, I mean, you're gonna go downhill. And I think that's basically what's happened to Brett Lowry since his 2011 season, his rookie year. It was a 953 OPS, and then from that season on, he never batted above 273.
I just don't think his ceiling is as high as people think. And yeah, you're right. He's just, you kind of know what you're going to get with him now. But again, it's not a bad player. I mean, it's just people need to be more reasonable with their expectations and know that he's probably going to strike out a little bit more than you'd like. But at the same time, he's not terrible. I mean, he's going to offer a pretty decent average. I mean, there was times last year where he was cracking 300 with his average, so he'll be hitting pretty hot for you at times too, and it won't be too bad. It's just people need to be more realistic. I have Brett Lowry, not, oh, Brett Lowry could be so great when he first burst on the scene. It's like, no, just look at what he's actually been doing lately, and that's what you're going to get. So yeah, the A season will hopefully carry some positives and look a lot better than last season. They'll build on a little momentum, and hopefully they won't be sitting in the cellar this year. I certainly hope not.
Certainly, it's always fun when both Bay Area teams are killing it in baseball, and when all Bay Area teams are killing it in sports. So
yeah, like the time when they were making those big trades, trading Cess and getting Lester and Samardzija and all those guys. At that time, the A's and Giants were both kind of sitting up on top right there, and that was awesome because it's like no matter who you were in the Bay Area, you were happy. My team's doing good, and your team's doing good.
In the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Let's all be friends, guys.
Especially with the Warriors doing well right now too, so it's really cool.
And the Sharks too.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little more Sharks.
Someone run through the studio.
Well, we'll talk a little more Sharks next week too. We're gonna delve into a little bit to their playoff hopes and playoff run. A little bit of a sneak preview into what we'll probably talk a little NFL next week too. Haven't dished on that in a while, but yeah, I think that's gonna pretty much do it for this podcast.
Ready to wrap it up. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Got that done.
So until next week, folks, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of the N Harmon Show.
Hope you had a good time. I know I did. Don't really know how to finish this thing off, so I'll say see you later, folks.
You stay classy.